explaining Iker Shechina. Mamale is kleine Geld.
And Iker Shechina was very strongly presented here because it jumped over the Tishlash.
Iker Shechina was the most powerful level of godliness that was revealed here before godliness was pushed out of the world. But I mean, this place was a place of, that produces the potential for this place to be that once again, right? It's obvious that that was only temporary because it was part of the plan of creation of the world that level should be revealed, but then hidden, right? Because the Chet Eitzadas happened on the sixth day of creation. It's not part of the history of the world, it's part of the creation of the world. If you created a world, the completion of the creation of the world is the world that exists after Chet Eitzadas. But he created a world with a much more powerful level of revelation.
This was the plan all along. With this RC, it was RC.
Yeah, that's the way he does it. Same thing by Matan Torah. Matan Torah brings about a certain perfection of the world, and then immediately it's destroyed by Chet Ego. Right? And once that's done, okay, now we're ready to go. Right? Now you've got a Torah, you've got an imperfect world. Go fix it. Right? Yossi, finish up those fast because we don't eat in Chassidus.
Oh, we don't?
No, eat it up. They'll be sitting there the whole time. They'll be worried about it. You don't have to eat it quickly, but generally you don't eat. People get too into the Rugala and they forget about God. Rugala is a big challenge for God. For people, for God. L'chaim. Okay, first chapter, 4 worlds. Atzilas, Bri, Yetzirah, Asiya. Now, why did the Rebbe explain those 4 worlds to us? The Rebbe explained those 4 worlds to us so we should understand something about our Mamalik. Why do we want to understand something about our Mamalik? Because really we want to understand about our Sefer. Because the Rebbe said that the Eibishter created the world in such a way that world, the desire for that world is that it should be a dir b'tachtonim, a dwelling place in the lower realms for ultimately atzmus, right? Because who had that taiva, so to speak? Where was that taiva for a dir b'tachtonim, so to speak? In atzmus. So atzmus says, I want to be revealed down there. Okay, so how? But I want to be revealed down there by virtue of the avodah of the people down there. So I'm going to create a place where avodah is necessary, right? And when they do that Avodah, they reveal a very, very, very powerful level of godliness. And the line that the Rebbe quotes from Tanya, Kadis Kapya Sitrachi Istalaki Kutakucha Brichu B'chul Almin, when you subdue the Sitrachi, you bring about a revelation of the level of godly light that exists in all the worlds equally, i.e. our Sevev. What's our Sevev? Well, let me explain to you our Mamale. What's our Mamale? Different levels of light that are revealed in different worlds, right? What's that revelation dependent on? Kalim. Obviously the light also, but ultimately in terms of Kalim. The Kli will reveal a certain aspect of the light. It will reveal, Kalim reveal a certain finite aspect of light, and they hide the infinite aspect of light. That's what Kalim do. Where does that all begin? That all begins in Elam Atzilus, 10 spheres, that then continues down into Elam Habriya, Yetzirah, Asiya, into this world, and we had a mushal for the kalim of those 4 worlds: an ice cup, a Coke bottle, a Sprite bottle, and a coffee cup. Okay, those are our 4 mushalim. For the kalim, not for the or, just for the kalim. The coffee cup hides what's in it. You can't see what's in it. That's Elam Hazeh. The kalim hide the godliness that's in them. Are they full of godliness? Absolutely. As full of godliness as Elam Atzilus? Absolutely. Right? No difference whatsoever. That being said, you can't see it down here. That's the Helam Behester that the Eibishter wants us to undo by virtue of our Avodah. Okay. In our base, the Rebbe taught us about Korbanos and what you and I can learn about Avodas Hashem from Korbanos. Adam ki yakriv, a person who wants to come close to Kadosh Baruch Hu. Mikem Korban Levaya, from you as a Korban. The first thing the Rebbe told us is Mikem, it's dependent on you, meaning you can do it. The second thing the Rebbe told us is Mikem Korban Levaya, you have to sacrifice the Nefesh HaBahamis. Mina Bakar, Mina Tzoyin, different types of Nefesh HaBahamis, right? The guy with no shirt on screaming at a football game in November in Michigan, and the lady with her opera glasses talking about how wonderful the soprano is. right? Different types of Yetzer Hara, different types of Nefesh Bahamis. How do we elevate the Nefesh Bahamis? Well, how were the Korbanos elevated on the base of Mikdash? In first bias, there was a miracle. There was a fire from above that came down and devoured the Korban from above, and there was a fire from below that we lit. So too in our Avodah, there's a fire from above, the fiery love of the Nefesh Elokis. The fire below is our Avodah from below, Kadis Kafi, Aris Kafi, and Aris Hafcha. Right? Though this is all review. This is what we've learned in this mimer so far. Right, so and how is it that I bring about the hislabshus, the clothing of the fire from above, the nefesh elokis into the nefesh bahamis, bizbeinenus elokis shagam and nefesh bahamis yochol lasiger, to contemplate godly ideas in a way that the nefesh bahamis can understand. How does nefesh bahamis understand anything? Nefesh bahamis is a very sophisticated thing. It has something called human intellect. Human intellect is quite sophisticated. It can understand very, very amazing ideas about God. Right? Okay, so if I learn those ideas about God, so then my understanding of Elokus becomes much more sophisticated, and it might very well be, if I'm serious about that and I think about it a little bit, that I'll become more interested in godliness and less interested in self. So my Nefesh Bahamis will become more interested in godliness and less interested in self. Right? Okay, that's where we're up to. Well, now then we started the third chapter, Ruach Shtus, and the Rebbe asked the question: how in the world could it be that a person could do an avayah? How could that be? How can we do an avayah?
We just learned the folding.
What?
Tanya, today's Tanya.
Yeah. It's all one. And finally, we have our mushal for Elam Gashmi. I had to wait 2 days for our mushal to come. Okay. There's our mushal for Elam Gashmi. You can't tell there's anything in it, right? But of course, what did we also say? That if you elevate yourself and look from above, you can see what's in it, right? Oh. Here, you want 4? You want 4? Here,
I'll take
4.
5.
Let me see what it says.
Writing names down?
Menachem's your first name.
Mendel.
Mendel.
In case you get confused.
With an olive? Drew one?
Yeah. Okay, I lost this
There you
now.
go. Wait.
You get an autograph too?
Tongue.
Guys, this is going
See,
to
how
stay.
you won't lose
This is
this,
going to
right?
be kept for a long time. It's been signed.
There you go. Not signed by the author, don't worry.
Bidding starting at 100.
Okay. Ruach Shtus. Right? The base of Mikdash was built with Atzei Shitim. Why Atzei Shitim? Well, we're not going to find out until the 5th chapter. Right? First, we're going to learn about Ruach Shtus. Just like it took us a while to learn about Sevev, we had to learn about Mamale first. So too, we're going to learn about Ruach Shtus of Klipa, and from Ruach Shtus of Klipa, we'll come to an appreciation of Ruach Shtus of Kedusha. Right? Shtus to Kedusha. What Shtus of Klipa? Like a Klipa. What does it cover up? The truth. Right? And therefore, the Rebbe told us, now we didn't explain, we got up to there, but we didn't do it. So then how can it be that I can do an Aveira? And now that question is a question that people might wonder, what do you mean? Oh, he's a tzaddik and he's asking the question, but we're not tzaddikim, and so for us Aveiras are our bread and butter, right? So no, based on what we said yesterday, if you think about it, doing an Aveira is really a very unreasonable thing, because if we were to take a survey of what it is that we believe, so one of the basic beliefs we have is that we have to listen to, as a result of all sorts of other basic beliefs. We went through them all yesterday, right? All those questions we answered in the survey we had. So the last question was, do I have to listen to everything written in Shulchan Aruch? Is it a true expression of God's will that was given to Moshe on Har Sinai? So the answer to that question is yes. And then the last question is, well, do I? And the answer to that question is no. So why does the last answer contradict every other answer in the survey? Right? Okay. Oh, because I have a Yetzer Hara. But I don't understand. The same Yetzer Hara gave all the answers to the survey. Right? The same Yitzhahara gave all those other answers. Yes, there's a God. Yes, he created the world. Yes, he did. Yes, Yitzias Mitzrayim. Yes, Kriyas Yamsuf. Yes, Matan Torah. Yes, Torah Shabbat. Yes, Torah Shabbat Peh. Right? Again, the same Nefesh Abamis gave all those answers. So all of a sudden, that Nefesh Abamis gets confused. What happens? Right? What happens to that Nefesh Abamis? Right? Bad idea to go out in -20 with no clothes on. Is that a bad idea? Probably a bad idea, right? You ever do that? No, of course I wouldn't do that. What kind of moron would do that? Right? Of course I wouldn't do that. Why? Because it's a stupid thing to do because you're going to die. Right? So I don't do it. Right? Okay. Well, I mean, in other words, I have this objective intellectual understanding of -20 being cold and that clothes and cold sort of go together. You know, you probably should wear some clothes if it's cold. Okay. So I'll wear clothes if it's cold. I mean, this is not rocket science. So how come I do a virus? Global I. I'm not just picking on myself. Okay. And again, Rebbe explained to us why is it called Ruach Shtus, Ruach Klipa, right? Because Klipa hides things. So what does Ruach Shtus do? Hides the truth. So let's start 4 lines up from the bottom. 5 lines up. 5 lines up from the bottom. Kain Ruach Shtus. See at the end of the line? Kain Ruach Shtus. Mechasa Mailim Umaster al Or Hagilu Elokus. It covers, it hides, it conceals the light of the revelation of Elokus. Page 114. 4 lines up. V'zeu asiba ma she'efshar asher adam yochel liyos chas v'shalom eivid aveda. And that's why a person can do an aveda. Okay. So now the Rebbe asked the question, Ech efshar davar she'yaveh adam lidei aveda. How can it possibly be that a person will do an Aveda? Now, obviously, again, when the Rebbe asked that question, he's asking that question regarding that person that you and I would call a so-called religious Jew. He's not talking about a person who never heard about Torah and mitzvahs, right? Obviously, that's not who he's talking to. He's talking to a person who knows about Torah and mitzvahs, grew up with it, or found out about it later, lives his life based on that, etc., etc. How does that person do an Aveda? And it's very interesting. I personally think it's very interesting. Either you will, you won't, right? You don't say, you want to hear a funny joke, right? Just tell the joke. We'll decide whether it's funny or not, okay? So, but I do think this is very interesting. People who are not religious, so to speak, non-religious Jews, get very, very upset when religious Jews do things against the Torah. It bothers the hell out of them. Right? How can that guy steal in business? He's religious. Well, I understand. His partner's not. He's also stealing. What's the problem? No, that bothers him. Now, he's right. It's called the Chil Hashem. I get it, right? But he's asking the question that the Rebbe's asking. He's a religious person. Why isn't he perfect? Well, religious people aren't perfect either, right? You might have met a few, right? You might actually brush the teeth of one, right? Okay, right? Hopefully you floss too, right? Or a water pick, whatever, right? Okay, so, but it's so interesting how people get very, very upset. Now, a thing that you might want to say in that comment, this is just parenthetical, but it does make people think. If you ever encounter that and people get very upset, well, I don't know about this religion because, look, there's this religious person, he's not perfect. So you might ask the following question, wait a minute. Your basic assumption is that a person who's religious should be perfect and morally better than everybody else? Yes, absolutely. Then why aren't you one? If they're better than everybody else, why don't you want to be that? Usually they think about it. They think about it. You're not going to turn him into Ravitya Masmid overnight, but he'll think about it. Oh, yeah.
It says here though that Adam over avera, and then im nichnas bo ruach shtut. Like, if the spirit of folly enters inside, then he'll do the chet. Right. But why necessarily only in someone religious?
Yeah. The other person doesn't know about it. Doesn't even know it's an avera. So it's a completely different action for that person. Is it damaging to that person? Absolutely. If a person doesn't know that smoking cigarettes is bad for you, is it still bad for you? Yes. But that person's a completely different person than the person who works in a cancer institute, right? Right?
But I read Tafshin Yud Gimel,
Right.
and it says like the Rebbe is talking about how he can't comprehend how a Jew can even sin. Like, and I don't know if he was.
There's but the Rebbe's not talking about that. Mitzad etzem and neshama, so it's absolutely impossible to imagine how a Jew can distance themselves from the Eibusher. But clearly, the Rebbe's not talking on the level of etzem and neshama right here. The Rebbe's talking about conscious you and me down here in Eilam Hazeh with a nefesh elokis and a nefesh abamis. That's the context of this. Even in that context, I don't understand why a person would come to this. So the Rebbe's going to explain very, very clearly what happens. Okay. Right? And then you'll see it's also clearly relevant to someone who theoretically would desire a relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Right? See what the Rebbe says, because that's the person about whom it's strange to imagine why they would do an Avera. Because it's not strange to imagine why a person who's never heard about mitzvahs wouldn't do mitzvahs. I mean, that's fairly obvious why they've never heard of it. They have a nefesh elokis, and that nefesh elokis is essentially connected to the Eibusher B'Seder, but their conscious reality has absolutely no knowledge or no awareness whatsoever of the fact that there's something called Torah and there's something called mitzvahs. So that then, how can that person possibly be expected to keep Torah and mitzvahs? Because conscious reality is real on some level. V'zeu asiba ma she'efshar fourth lesson. Yochel liyos chas sham over veda. The Lechaura, the Rebbe says, efshar davar. How is it possible? Asher yavar adam lidei aveda. Vurak, now the Rebbe says an amazing thing. Hurak lefisha eina margish. He doesn't feel. Shebezehu nifrad me'elukus. That based on this action, he's separating himself from the Eibusher. Now, on a certain level, you could say this mitzad etzem and neshama, that the Jew has some innate connection to the Eibusher. Okay, but the Rebbe is talking in much more basic terms about people who desire a relationship with the Eibusher. Those people, they call themselves religious. Those people will still do averas. Why? Because what do they say about this particular act that they're about to do? That this won't separate them from the Eibusher. V'nid meloi, what does it appear to him? Asher adena biyadusei, that he's still in his Yiddishkeit. The person will still define himself as a religious Jew. No, he's not. Not at this particular moment. If a person's doing an Aveira, what are they? A person doing an Aveira. Is there any difference between that person and a person who does Aveiras all day long in this particular moment? No difference. Just like, and we're very, very careful about this, and we believe in this, and that's why we go do many of the things we go do, a Jew doing a mitzvah. At that particular moment, what's he like? Yeah, he's a Jew doing a mitzvah. What's the difference between whether he did 20 mitzvahs in the last hour or he did no mitzvahs in the last hour? Right now, what's he doing? He's doing a mitzvah, so do a mitzvah with him. This whole thing of being religious, right? But what's a religious Jew? He does a lot more mitzvahs. He's looking for mitzvahs all the time. What's a so-called non-religious Jew? I guess he probably does less mitzvahs because he's not looking around for them all the time, right? Usually because he never heard of them. Okay, fine. Religious, non-religious. You connected to the Eibusher or not? So if I'm doing a mitzvah, what am I? I'm connected to the Eibusher. What did I do 5 minutes ago? Irrelevant. Right now, what am I doing? I'm doing a mitzvah. Okay, and if the opposite, don't want to go there, but that's what the Rebbe is talking about. Right? I just finished Shas in 20 minutes learning, right? Gemara, Rashi, Tosfos, and all of the Rishonim, because I'm very fast. Right? And then that Jew eats a ham sandwich. Where is he right now? He's a ham sandwich eater. That's what he is right now. Is he a terrible, horrible, disgusting person we should throw off a cliff? No. Just like the guy who didn't finish Shas who's eating a ham sandwich isn't a terrible, horrible, disgusting person we should throw off a cliff. But right now, what's he doing? He's doing an Aveira. Is he connected to the Eibusher? No. Right now he's not connected to the Eibusher. How can he be connected to the Eibusher eating that? Right? Oh, that's, whoa. Now, that's why no one eats ham sandwiches. Because everybody knows if you eat a ham sandwich, you're not connected to the Eibusher. But what about those Aveiras that we think aren't so serious because we look around and everybody's doing them? So I guess you can still be a firm Jew and do this because look around. And I'll pick an innocuous one, but it happens to be against Shulchan Aruch. Talking during Kaddish is an Aveira. It's an Aveira. It's also. It's also to talk when the Kaddish is being said. Right? It's also. Shulchan Aruch. Is it turning a light on and off on Shabbos? Of course not. But is it also? It's also. Right? Why do people do it? Because that's what frum people do. Right? So I guess I'm still a frum person. I look around, frum people, at least the frum people in the back of the shul all are. So if I'm hanging around in the back of the shul, I guess that's what frum people do. So it's like not a big deal. I just learned yesterday in Shulchan Aruch that I'm not allowed to do that. Okay, Beseder, I get it. But, someone says something really interesting to me and I just can't wait the 45 seconds to answer it. I just can't wait. Why? Well, because it's not like I'm separating from the Eibishter by doing this. I'm not eating a ham sandwich, right? No, I really am. I'm not. I'm really not. It's not as serious. I remember once a friend of mine, Ger Chassid, was Shabbos afternoon after Shkia, which means you can't eat or drink until Havdalah. But it was very, very hot. And, this is what his was going through. And so he picked up some water and he drank it. And I said, Tzvika, what are you doing? He said, yeah, I know, you're right. But then he said a line that only a chassid could appreciate. Right? Not that he's right, but I get it. Not that he's right. He said, yeah, no, you're right. But I tell you one thing I know. When I'm finished with my 120 years and they start going through all the things I did and they start with the worst, when they get to this one, I'll know they're near the end. Okay, he's right about that, right? But that doesn't mean you're allowed to do it, right? But he's right about it. But that's why I might do it. Because I'll say, well, like, what's the big deal? I'm not a frum. I mean, look at him. He's got a sputek and he's got payas and he's got his piece. He's like so religious. He's willing to walk around with his pants rolled up into his socks. He's a ger chassid. He looks pretty frum, right? So he's not frum. Of course he's frum. Well, at that particular moment, I'm doing something that's not part of the game. So where am I? Ruach Shtus. It's pretty easy for Ruach Shtus to get that. Ruach Shtus is not going to ever get that guy to start turning lights on and off on Shabbos. Is that going to happen? Now, in the fourth chapter, the Rebbe is going to explain to us that, not psychologically, which is what we're talking about now, but metaphysically. Why not? Why are there certain Averas we're prone to and certain Averas we're not prone to? What happens metaphysically with the Avera? That's the fourth chapter. Here the Rebbe is talking psychology, so to speak. What'll I think? The amazing line. Nidma lo yasher dena b'yadusei. He'll think he's still in his Yiddishkeit. The emir de'asem, as if he knows the truth at that moment, if he can maintain a completely objective understanding of reality, kameshu as it is, shall yedeach hate va'avan, through the hate and oven, through a wrongdoing, nasen nifrad mi'elakus, he's separated from the Eibishter. This is the Lubavitcher Rebbe talking about a Jew being separate from the Eibishter, right? Oh, Jew's never separate from the Eibishter. Well, I don't understand. The Lubavitcher Rebbe just said a Jew can be separate from the Eibishter. Isn't he the guy who told us a Jew can never be separate from the Eibishter? So I guess we have to understand that. Don't worry, get to the fourth chapter, you'll understand it. But the same Rebbe is telling, so don't say, oh no, the Rebbe got it wrong, because I read in a Sikha. No, this is the Lubavitcher Rebbe just said that an Avera separates us from the Eibishter. That's what it does. Right? How does that separation work? On what level is that separation? On what level does it exist? Is that okay? That the Rebbe will explain to us in the fourth chapter. Fine. But is there a level of separation? Absolutely. 100%. Just like there's a level of connection with the Ro Mitzvah. Because what we do actually matters. Our actions create reality relative to the world at large, but also relative to ourselves and relative to our relationship with the Eibishter. So what might I say? It's not really separating from the Eibishter, because after all, it's like not such a big deal. But if you were to know what's really happening at this moment, he wouldn't do this. If he really understood the consequences of this, if he really understood what's going on when he does this, he wouldn't do it. Right? What's interesting about tzaddikim? We don't understand tzaddikim. They're just in a different place than us. But one thing we can understand about tzaddikim, by a tzaddik, his conscious awareness of talking during Kaddish and driving a car on Shabbos, they're the same. There's no difference. They're both impossible. Right? Just impossible. Why? Well, because it's just this one will separate me and this one will. Now, obviously, the separation of this one is much greater. And again, we'll understand exactly how that works in the fourth chapter. So don't worry about that. I'm not going to talk about it now. But it is interesting, back to everyday people, most Jewish communities right? I mean, there's also different kinds of most religious Jewish communities have aveiros that are considered mutter by that community, so to speak. There'll be certain things that community will be lax about. Not mamish aveiros, but right? There'll be things they'll be stricter about, and things that they'll be a lot more lax about. In Lubavitch, unfortunately, one of the things that you'll find Lubavitch men very lax about, talking during Kaddish and talking during Chazar Sashatz. Go to a Litvish shul, no one talks during Kaddish, no one talks during Chazar Sashatz. They're very firm about that. Right? They're very firm about that. It's not my job to tell you what they're not firm about. Right? Okay, that's not my issue. It's not their relationship with God. That's nothing to do with me. Right? They don't need my vote. Okay, fine. But there's things that they're very, very firm about. Okay, there's things Lubavitchers are very, 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 very firm about. Right? Lubavitcher sees a guy walking the shul and the guy doesn't have tefillin. He'll walk up to him and says, you have tefillin? You need tefillin? You want to put on tefillin? Right? No other shul will do that. Okay. So not that we're terrible, horrible, and we're beating ourselves up. No, but it happens to be that there's a problem in Lubavitch. One of the problems amongst Lubavitch men, they've just forgot about those sifrim in Shulchan Aruch. Kaddish, right? Kaddish. From the time the Chazan says Baruch Atah until the Kaddish after Mevarach Esam Yisrael B'Sholem, right? You're not supposed to talk. Right? You're not allowed to talk during Chazar Sashatz. Oh, really? Now, why is it easy to talk during Chazar Sashatz? Because you look around, you see a bunch of people who seem to be religious people, and they might even be people who are like paid to be religious people, and they're talking during Chazar Sashatz. So I guess it's okay, right? I guess he looks pretty frum, right? So I guess I'm still frum if I do that, right? I mean, frum people are allowed to do this. True? Okay, that's why every community will have its thing that it's probably a little easier to do or harder to do because of the social environment around. Because, I mean, what are we going to pretend that the environment doesn't affect us? Of course it does. Right? Positively and negatively. But if a Jew were to think, wait a minute, this is going to separate me from the Eibishter, he's not going to do that. That's why that saying, let's see an example. The Rebbe is going to say something so interesting here. Lefisha b'teva kol Yisrael. Now the Rebbe is going to say something about our essential nature, right? Lefisha b'teva kol Yisrael she'ena reitza b'shum eifen v'ena yochal liyos nifrad me'elokus. Now everything we're saying, I said this is relevant to the religious person. What do I mean? Simple shot. This is relative to the religious person. On a deeper level, is it relative to every single Jew? Yes, the Seder, but the conscious reality of every single Jew. Yes, every Jew, every affiliated Jew will have their red lines. Right? That if you don't do that, you're not Jewish, so to speak. Right? Okay, that's true. Now, how many? There might be 3 things. Okay, but there's not. There's 613 things more. Right? But fine. Okay, but in the cultural Jewish world, what is it that you have to do? And if you don't do it, you're basically ois Yiddishkeit. You give tzedakah. If you give tzedakah. If you don't give tzedakah, you're not a Yid. The Jews who don't give tzedakah are considered the lowest of the low in most Jewish communities. The non-religious part of the community. You have to give tzedakah. Baruch Hashem. What's happening now in this generation, I'm not so sure, but up until now. If you don't give tzedakah, there's something wrong with you. Right? Remember, there was a Jew in our community who had nothing to do with the Jewish community. So my father was talking to a non-Jewish guy, and the non-Jews will always remind you whether you're Jewish or not. He was talking to a non-Jewish guy, and he mentioned this person. So the non-Jewish guy said to my father, he's Jewish, So my father said, he's not Jewish. So he said, what do you mean he's not Jewish? I know him very well. I sit next to him every Sunday in church. That was his line. Of course he's Jewish. I sit next to him every Sunday in church. How can he not be Jewish? I know him very well. So where that Jew's holding, I have no idea in terms of his own conscious reality. I guess not much of a... Okay, but the Jew has some sort of connection. Yes, what was also mentioned was Yom Kippur. He'll probably go to shul on Yom Kippur, right? probably have a Pesach Seder, right? Certain things that you just do. Okay, and if you don't do them, so then you're really not in the game. Okay, so there's definitely that, right? But here the Rebbe is talking simply to you and me, right? I mean, he's talking to his Chassidim. Right? So now that Chassid also, Baruch Hashem, right? It's not only non-religious people that have Pintele Yid, have that spark of Judaism in them that can't be destroyed. You and I also do, which is very uplifting. Right? So the Rebbe says, Lefisha b'teva kol Yisrael. It's the nature of every Jew, and this is talking about the deepest nature, the essential nature. Sheina reitza b'shum efen. He doesn't want in any way. Veina yochel, and isn't able klal at all liyos nifrad me'elakus, to be separate from the Eibishter. So now you hear that statement, and you, especially in our generation, you look around and say, well, that's a very difficult statement to understand, because I mean there seem to be so many Yidden who aren't connected to the Eibishter in any way, shape, or form, in any revealed way, shape, and form. How does that work? So the simple understanding of that line, and it's brought in Chassidus all the time, is the Rebbe is describing, when you describe something, you describe it in a state of health. Describe the human heart. Well, you're going to describe the human heart in terms of a healthy human heart. What does it do? Well, it pumps blood, and this is its capacity to do what it does, etc. Right? Okay. Are there hearts that don't do that? Yeah, for sure. All right. Why? Well, they're diseased. They're not a healthy heart. So am I defining the heart by the diseased heart or by the healthy heart? Well, I define a heart by the healthy heart. This is what hearts do. This is what lungs are supposed to do. This is what a spleen does, right? Remember we asked the doctor once, and now I don't remember what the answer was, right? This is what a liver does, and this is what, whatever, kidneys do. Okay, say there. But you're going to define it in terms of a healthy kidney, a healthy heart, healthy lungs. Are there lungs that are not very good at absorbing oxygen? Yeah, there's lungs that aren't so good at absorbing oxygen. Yeah, okay. But that's an unhealthy lung. So you're going to define a Jew. What are you going to say about a Jew? You're going to define a Jew in terms of the healthy Jew. And what's a healthy Jew? A healthy Jew is someone who doesn't want and isn't able to be separate from the Eibishter. Is it possible for a Jew to be in a state that's not healthy? Yes, absolutely, 100%. It's like it's possible for a heart not to be healthy, but you define a heart in terms of a healthy heart. So that's a healthy Jew. That's what a Jew, and every single Jew has that place of health in them, which we'll see in the 4th chapter. Okay. But it might be covered up. It might not be allowed to express itself. Okay. Varaya, what's the proof? And this is so interesting in terms of Jewish history. The kasher ba lidei nisayin, when it comes to a state of nisayin, and here the Rebbe is definitely talking about every single Jew in this case. There's no question. But again, it's most powerfully relevant to the Jew who will define themselves as a so-called religious Jew. The kasher ba lidei nisayin, that when it comes to a state of trial, challenge, and they force him regarding something of non-belief, blasphemy. At that moment, it's impossible to err, ERR, and to think the Soviet comes up with his gun and tells the Jew to bow down to something or whatever, or to do some aveira. It's pretty clear what the equation is right now. I have a choice to either stay connected to the Eibishter or disconnect from the Eibishter. So at that point, it's absolutely clear what's at stake. And Jewish history is full of people making the right decision. There's the few people who made the wrong decision. Wrong, who are we to judge? But in terms of objective reality, the right decision is to be Meisher Nefesh, okay? And that's the history of the Jewish people. All those people who are Meisher Nefesh, they're all the frumest people in town? No, not at all. They might have had a hard time living relative to Yiddishkeit, but they somehow found the koyach to die for the sake of Yiddishkeit. Unfortunately, Jewish history is littered with such examples. So what does the Rebbe say? It's impossible for that person to make a mistake, and to think he'll give up his life. And he'll accept upon himself all sorts of afflictions, pain. He'll give up his life. Even though he might not be living his life al Kedushas Hashem, he'll give up his life for Kedushas Hashem. V'chein nir b'muchash, and we see muchash means we see concretely with our chushim, with our senses. Gam afilu b'dargas apchuses, even in the lower levels, the simpler levels, shebakalim, the simplest Jews, upeish Yisrael, and people who are not particularly frum, so to speak, dalulim, that they are ultimately able, lim sar nafsham al kedush shmei yisbarach, to give up their life for the Eibishter. Why? Lefi da'az. We'll come back to all this. Hara yodeya umargish b'nafshe. He knows, and he feels in his soul what's at stake. Ve'ena reitzeh chas v'shalom lipart me'elokei Yisrael, and he doesn't want to separate from the Eibishter. And that'll apply to every Jew. And so alachas kama v'kama, the Jew has a very strong conscious connection to the Eibishter. So what's an example of what the Rebbe just brought in? We can imagine this example. Berel and Shmerel, they can't stand each other. They hate each other. Berel, if he sees Shmerel smile, it ruins his whole day. Shmerel, if he hears a good word about Berel, he wants to explode. The two of them both daven in the back of the shul at different ends, and all morning long, from the time they put on their talis till they take off their Rabbeinu Toms, they're just, God, look at Beryl, he thinks he's so from with that Shmoneh, so he's davening after the shots even began, he's pretending he's so low life, that Beryl. Shmerel's, and then the Beryl saying the same thing about Shmerel, can't stand each other. They might even say lashon hara about each other. Can't stand each other. Okay? They got a lot of chayas from their dislike of each other. Beryl walks outside. He left shul early, earlier than Shmerel. Earlier than everybody else. For whatever reason, he walks outside, and outside is some 20-year-old Soviet soldier with a gun. He says, I'm looking for a guy named Shmerel. You know where he is? This is Beryl's chance. He can get rid of Shmerel forever. This will be the end of Shmerel. All he has to do is say, yeah, he's in the right corner over there. And Shmerel's gone. He's going to be taken to Siberia, never to be heard of again. This is the best day in Beryl's life. No more Shmerel. What could be better? But you and I know what happens. Is there a Havamina that Beryl tells this heathen where Shmerel is? Not a Havamina. The guy takes his gun and smacks him on the side of the head, and blood is coming out of his ear. Then he kicks him in the mouth and he loses 5 teeth. Is Beryl telling this heathen where Shmerel is? Not a chance. Because what does Beryl know? If I tell this heathen where Shmerel is, I am ois Yiddishkeit. I have nothing to do with the Jewish people in any way, shape, or form. Because the worst thing a Jew can do is give another Jew to that guy. And he knows that. And he'll put up with anything not to do that. Can we imagine that scenario? Yeah. I don't understand. 3 minutes before Beryl was Meiser Nefesh, not to give up Shmerel, he said the juiciest, hottest piece of lashon hara about Shmerel that you've ever heard. It was so juicy that people were covering. People who love to hear lashon hara were going, "Oh my gosh, come on! That's like too much. Even I can't listen to that. At least let me take off my tefillin before you tell me that." 3 minutes before, and then 3 minutes later, he's willing to be Meiser Nefesh to save Shmerel's life. What did he in shul? What was clearly, obviously, the dynamics of that event? Beryl figured that hating Shmerel had nothing to do with his relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. It didn't in any way, shape, or form affect his relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu. Otherwise, it was probably a mitzvah to hate Shmerel because you want me to tell you the reasons. These are this, these are this, these are this, these are this, he said this, he did this, he's Shmerel, Since Yeshiva Ketana, I haven't been able to get along with Shmerel. It was a big problem in the old days, right? Because no one ever moved away. Like, they were just stuck with each other in the same village for 80 years, and they just couldn't stand each other. Poor Beryl and Shmerel. Beryl would say, Meida, Shmerel, Ani, Shmerel, Lefanecha, Shmerel. Splash Nagelbasser every time. They say, Shmerel. Couldn't stand him. In the end, he ended up being Meiser Nefesh to save Shmerel's life. Because when it just came to everyday life, so he wasn't aware of the fact that he was distancing himself. He couldn't take that step back to objective reality. What was covering it up? The Ruach Shtus was covering up the truth. But when it became absolutely clear what's at stake, Chas v'sholom, that he would distance himself from the Eibishter. He just figured that he could be a frum Jew and still hate Shmerel. Can you be a frum Jew and still hate Shmerel? No. Right? Not allowed to hate Shmerel. Okay, but that part he missed out. But give Shmerel to the Goyim? Not a chance. No such thing. Okay. It's amazing. And we can even imagine that happening. Because what does he know when push comes to shove? He knows, and he also feels in his soul. 8th line, I think. He doesn't want to separate himself. That this to be chas v'shalom v'chas v'shalom, nifrad melokei Yisrael, separate from the God of Israel. Ein b'yechel shum bar Yisrael. No Jew can do that. So again, every Jew, any Jew has any sensitivity to their own Yiddishkeit will have that red line, whatever that red line will be. Now, that red line is supposed to be every single halach in Shulchan Aruch, ultimately. That's the true red line, relative to the moment. Not relative to, general reality, relative to that moment. Okay. Aval, B'sharei Devarim, other things, not quite as obvious as what's happening to him right now when he's being asked to be Meiser Nefesh. Hainu b'sharei aveiros Rachmana litzlan, other aveiros Rachmana litzlan. Hare eino yodeya, he doesn't know. Ve'ena margish, he doesn't feel. Shenas al yedei that he becomes by virtue of this nifrad mi'achdus yisbarach, separate from the unity of God. Doesn't realize that. Doesn't feel that. Even if there's some awareness, some residual awareness in his conscious reality, but still he'll figure out it's not such a big deal. He might go through he might have a certain battle relative to it, but if chas v'shalom he loses the battle, so that he's losing the battle because at the end he'll say, it's not such a big deal, it's not such a big deal. V'nid meloi. And what does it appear to him? The Rebbe says it again. That he's still in his Yiddishkeit like he was. Meaning the person has a certain self-image, right? Everybody has a certain self-image. Not in a horrible, disgusting, selfish way, but a certain image of themselves, of who they are, what image they project to the world, and that image hopefully is in line with who they really understand themselves to be, as opposed to, fakers, who, shine one thing, but they're really something else. But normal, everyday people. Right? You get a basic idea of who they are and how they relate to themselves by virtue of how they relate to the world around them and how they see themselves. Okay, that's perfectly reasonable. So the self-image of that Jew who calls themselves a religious Jew is that he's a religious Jew. That's what he says about himself. I'm a frum Yid, right? Okay, or I'm a chassid, or whatever he's saying about himself. Okay, so why is he able to do things that objectively are contradictory to that self-image? Because, and the Rebbe just said an amazing thing, and again, we said it yesterday, but it's so striking after you read what the Rebbe just said. The Rebbe doesn't do this, right? But he's explaining to you and I why we do. And he's explaining in such an incredible way. Why might a Yid come to that place? A Yid comes to that place because he doesn't think that it's somehow contradicting his self-image. No, I can still be who I think I am and do this. But if you take a step back, if someone else would ask him the question about exactly the same action, what would his answer be? Now, that's not a good idea. Don't do that. But about himself, that's hard to say. Okay, and we've all experienced that, right? That's life in Olam Hazeh. Okay. Does that mean the person's the worst, terrible, horrible person and should be locked up forever? No, he's a person living in Elam Hazeh who hasn't yet come to the point where they're able to deal with every single impulse that the Nefesh Bahamis throws their way. Right? Which is, I think, just about everybody we know. Okay, but the Rebbe is describing the dynamic of all that, and the dynamic is just so astounding. And that's why it's just so interesting sociologically. That's why every community will have things that they're a little less, a little more lax on, and things that they're very, very frum about, 100%. Amazing. It's amazing. Where does this come from? The Rebbe explains. The Sitracha. This comes from the Ruach Shtus of the Sitracha. Shemechasa al ha'orva gilui. What does it hide? The light and the revelation. It hides to a person the light of godliness. I keep reading because what the Rebbe is going to say is just so fascinating in terms of more of the dynamic. It hides the light. Before we explain this, we'll let the Rebbe explain it in the next 7 lines. Shelo yirgish b'eh, he doesn't feel it. Perish. The ruach shtus, the spirit of folly, this temporary insanity that overcomes the person. Gorem leila adam, causes in a person heder hergish, a lack of sensitivity. I can be insensitive to all sorts of things, or I can be sensitive to all sorts of things. I can be insensitive to other people. There are people who are insensitive to other people. They just don't notice other people. They're so busy worrying about themselves that they just don't notice other people. Okay. It's insensitive. People can be very sensitive to other people, not so sensitive to the Eibush. They don't feel godliness in their life. They're not sensitive to godliness all around them. Okay. Some people are insensitive to both. Some people are sensitive to both. Those are very, very special people. Okay. So this person at this point just that he's lacking a certain sensitivity relative to the godliness all around him. So let's see how the Rebbe describes that. And that comes from the Ruach Shtus. The Ruach Shtus causes this lack of sensitivity. Hainu. So now the Rebbe gets into it a little more. Shetoike fachemda, the power of the dearness, bahataiva, in this physical desire that he has. It doesn't have to be physical, right? The type, it could also be an emotional desire. He's looking for certain emotional feedback or whatever it happens to be. V'chamimus, and the warmth of the Nefesh Bahamis, the passion of the Nefesh Bahamis, Garim loy causes for him hakridus, coldness, v'heder hergish, a lack of sensitivity, b'inyanim ruchnim, in spiritual matters. Meaning to the extent that the person is very sensitive to Gashmias, to that extent they'll be less sensitive to Ruchnias. Right? To put it in, I don't know whether these terms are used anymore, but I mean when I was a young pup, so these are the terms that people used to use. I think they still do, right? You have to be always very careful of people who say this. I'm very in tune with my body. Very in tune. 10 to 1, that person is not in tune with you. Doesn't think about you, isn't sensitive to your existence. You are simply there to make him feel better about himself, which you might be useful to help him accomplish. Very in tune with my body. So they'll tell you about the sugar rush they get. Oh, I had too much sugar, I got a sugar rush. So good to eat 7 puddings. No, it's not a good idea to eat 7 puddings. Don't eat 7 puddings, right? But don't get so into your sugar rush. Just get over it and go learn some Torah. Might it be harder to concentrate because you just ingested, just ate 15 teaspoons of white sugar? Okay, it might be hard to do. Right, okay, but you can overcome it. You can do it. It's going to be a real battle. Right? In tune. So to the extent that I'm in tune, that doesn't mean we ignore our body. You have a mitzvah. You're supposed to take care of yourself, right? Say it 100%. but in tune. You want to be in tune with something? We should be in tune with our soul. If we're in tune with our soul, we're doing great stuff. If we're in tune with our body, we're probably losing the plot. All right, so a person can be very, very sensitive to the needs of their nefesh bahamis, I'm sorry. And that'll create a situation where they're somewhat cold and lacking in sensitivity for spiritual matters. Peirush, die Zugebunkeit. The root of that word is bond, right? To be bound up. It's a kochkeit. A koch is to emphasize something and think about it and focus on it. The Zugebunkeit, the connection, the Zukochkeit, and the koch. People would ask, what did the Rebbe koch in the Verbrengen? What was the focal point of the Verbrengen? In inyanim chemda v'taiva b'rasiche, in matters of taiva b'rasiche, in boiling, to the extent that a person is very passionate and very involved in their physical taivas, zemakarer, this cools, by definition, a hergish, their sensitivity, their hair and gefühl, two words for sensitivity, their hair and gefühl, feelings. Binyanim ruchnim. I can't have my cake and eat it too. To decide what it is that I'm going to try to develop a sensitivity in. Ruchnius or gashmis? Am I going to be sensitive? Talmud, kitay vavaya, taste and see that the Eibishter is good. Am I going to work on being sensitive to the beauty of Elokus? Or am I going to work on being sensitive to the very subtle taste of a 1978 Cabernet Sauvignon? Oh. Which beer is better? Do you like blonde beer or lager? Now, does that mean you don't taste the difference? You probably taste the difference. But are you going to be koching in that? Your preparation for Shabbos is going to be driving 5 miles to go get just the right beer that you like to drink at the Shabbos table? I don't know. Yeah. If you're going 5 miles to get just the right beer that your guest likes to drink at the Shabbos table, that's maybe worth it. Because you're going to make that Jew happy. Oh, look what I got you. Oh, wow. Where'd you go? I drove to Minnesota. I got stuck in a demonstration. I almost was shot, but I came out with the beer that you like. Right? Minnesota. I don't know what it is with Minnesota. Like, what's with these people? What's in their water that they just, go mushug every couple of years?
Well, definitely a lot of ice in their water.
Is there anything about self-care, about doing kind things for yourself, or things for yourself that you like, not in like a egotistical?
You can't beat yourself up. But I don't think most of us. Now, again, there's people who have a psychological issue and they will be too hard on themselves and they'll beat themselves up and they have to sit and talk to someone about that and work on that, 100%. But generally, I think most of us probably don't have to worry so much about how we'll take care of ourselves because we'll figure out how to do that without a lot of, avoid this. So I'll make sure that happens. Probably spend more time worrying about how to take care of other people and take care of things that have a little more importance. Because, naturally, what's my nefesh bahamis interested in taking care of? Me. So it's not so much avoided to do that. Now, some people will have a real issue and they'll really beat themselves up and they'll neglect themselves. And, okay, so that's a psychological issue and they really have to deal with that. But your average everyday person, that's not their issue. They're going to, adarabah, without work, they're going to take care of themselves too much. Enough already, just enough. It's good, just fine. Just tie your shoes and go. You don't have to, maybe not these shoes, maybe these shoes. Just put on a pair of shoes and get out of the house and do something. Right? Okay. But you're right. There's definitely people who neglect themselves, and that's not healthy either. Not allowed to neglect ourselves. God created us. We're supposed to take care of ourselves just like we take care of other people. You're no less created by God than anybody else. Right? So just like you'll take care of someone else created by God, you have to take care of yourself created by God, which means, interesting enough, what does the pasuk say? You should love your fellow like yourself. What does that mean? You're allowed to love yourself. What does that mean, love yourself? What does that mean to love yourself? What does it mean to love someone else? If he's cold, give him a sweater. Why? Well, what do you do to yourself when you're cold? You give yourself a sweater. When you're hungry, what do? You feed yourself. Well, when he's hungry, go feed him. That's what Ahavas Yisrael is. Obviously, it's taking care of another person like you take care of yourself. Well, naturally, if you're hungry, what do? You go look for something to eat, right? You don't say, oh, no, I'm just going to be hungry and suffer. No, you go find something to eat because you're hungry and just, get it done, eat, and get on with life. You see a Jew's hungry? Go feed him. Anybody. I don't have to be a Jew, but you see we'll take care of our own first. Right? We're allowed to do that. You take care of your family first. Okay. Does that mean you don't care about anybody else? No, you care about someone else. But if your son is starving, God forbid, and your neighbor's son, you're going to take care of your son first. Right? If your neighbor's a Jew, you'll probably split it. But okay. Because he's also your son on some level. Mm-hmm. Okay. But you're going to take it. Love. The Abish said, love people like you love yourself. Someone else looks like they need an arm around the shoulder and a good word. So you'd like that if you were them. So do that to them. Right? That's what it means. That's what Abish Yisrael is. Let's find a place to stop, and we'll stop. Mm-hmm. So now the Rebbe describes some. The Frierdiker Rebbe is so good at describing these situations. If you've ever read anything that the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote, and a lot of the things are translated into English in an amazing way. We've talked about it before. The Branches of the Chassidic Menorah is a book you should all read. Shimon Neubert. What's the other one? I think the Chassidic Legacy, I think it's called. Is that Shimon Neubert? A guy named Shimon Neubert translated a number of things the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote that are absolutely astounding. They're amazing. Likutei Diburim. So Uri Kaplan translated all of Likutei Diburim into English. It's 5 volumes. All right? There's 4 volumes of Likutei Diburim. Some of it is Lashon HaKodesh, some of it is Yiddish. He translated it all into English. And Uri has a way of capturing the romance of the Frierdiker Rebbe when he writes. Also, Shimon Neubert does that. But you'll see that the Frierdiker Rebbe is so descriptive. It's almost look at the next couple of lines. He's amazing. Perish die Zugebundenkeit und Zukochkeit in Inyoni Chemde v'Saiber v'Sicha Zemekare, this cools Hahergish, the sensitivity, dem der Herren Gefühl b'Inyonim el Ruchnim. I mean, I can't be in 2 places at once. If I have this koch and the difference between the sushi over there and the sushi over there, that's going to diminish my sensitivity to ruchnius. If you think it's not, well, trust the Rebbe. He knows better than you. It is a zoy. Now he describes it in graphic terms. The Frierdiker Rebbe. It is a zoy. He is a zoy. So full. Ibergegeben, so fully Ibergegeben, given over. Ibergegeben, given over, overgiven, right? Given over. Binyone Taivasev, in his matters of Taiva, V'Rtzoyneisev, in his desires, Achumrim, V'Gashim, the physical and material. So completely involved in his physical desires. As der Ruchni is dikahergish, so his spiritual sensitivity is by him, but Tachlis Ahelim V'Hester, completely concealed. Hainu shenasa bilti margish klal. You can come a person who's completely lacking in sensitivity to godly things. Right? And the Rebbe is going to describe that person later, right? As someone who's what? He's like a cow in Pampona, right? He's going to be running through the streets, and what if there's a person in front of him? I just trample the person. Whether the cow's sensitive to anything going on around him, all he does is just running. So if you're in the way, he's going to trample you and kill you. I mean, that's just the way it is. He's not sensitive to, oh my goodness, a human, I better turn. He's not thinking that way. Why? He's a behemoth. Is anything wrong with the cow? Nothing wrong with the cow. That's a cow. Can we be like that? Yeah. Right? We can also be completely different, which is amazing, incredible, and fantastic. The Rebbe's going to talk about that too, don't worry. But he's also going to call a spade and say, look, you want to know where you can go, where you're going to end up. Right? Now look what the Rebbe says. Ve'ena margish la noyam, to the sweetness. Va'rivus, in other words, the name is pleasantness. Va'rivus, the sweetness. Va'toiv, and the goodness. Va'ilui, and the loftiness. V'kiyum mitzvahs. Through doing mitzvahs. Wow. Therefore, he also doesn't feel the lowliness in his distance from Elokus. So here it's so interesting. What does the Rebbe say? So after carrying out our kishkas with all of this, that we're just so into Gashmias, we can't fight our way out of a paper bag in anything godly. Okay. So then the Rebbe says, what's the real issue? And we'll stop with this, but it's such a powerful thing. The Rebbe says, why is it that I'll allow the Ruach Shtus to overcome me? And this is why our Aveda is the way it is. We'll talk about it in a second. Because I don't feel the beauty of the mitzvah. And if I don't feel the beauty of the mitzvah, then I don't know what I'm missing when I'm doing an Avera. If I don't feel the beauty of the Elokus in the mitzvah, so how can I feel the darkness if I don't feel the light? Right? It's so interesting that the Rebbe throws that in. The whole, when you read this chapter, the whole thing is like, this is what we were talking about. Doing Averas, negative. Then the Rebbe first, interesting enough, when he talks about the cause and effect, what's the cause? I don't see the beauty in the mitzvah, so then I'm not going to see the lowliness in the Avera, because I'm not sensitive to Elokus when I'm encountering it, so then I'm not going to be sensitive to the lack of Elokus when I'm encountering that. And that's why Hasidic Aveda is so much focused on the Va'asei Teiv, on the positive of it, on the Elokus of it. So yes, the Rebbe will tear our kishkas out and tell us what an Avera is. Okay, he did it for half a page. Right? But basically, when you learn Chassidus, and this mimer, and all French Yankees, this mimer is really heavy. What did we talk about for the first 2 pages? The Eibishter. How beautiful it is, how incredible it is, and how you can touch it, and how to do that, and what, right? So unbelievable. Then he says, I just want you to know something. What can also happen? Why take me there? Just threw me in the pit. Well, why in the pit? Because he didn't appreciate the flowers when you were on the ground. So he ended up in a pit. What are you doing in the pit? Get out of the pit. Right? And you realized how beautiful it is outside the pit. So I'm not going to stay in the pit. Why do I want to stay in the pit? Look how beautiful it is out there. But if I don't appreciate how beautiful it is out there, so then I won't appreciate that the pit's a pit. This is what there is. Eilam Hazeh is Eilam Hazeh. Wow. And that's why Chassidus spends so much time talking about the beauty of Torah and mitzvahs as opposed to talking about the disaster of Averas. Even though here the Rebbe is talking about the disaster of Averas. Yeah, we have to know that. But again, as soon as he does that, he goes right back to, if you felt the beauty of the mitzvah, you wouldn't go there. Right? I'll tell you one quick story and then we'll stop. That my son and I were for bringing on the phone. And this is years ago. And I asked him a question because it had come up in Farbrengen, wherever, somewhere. And I just found it to be an interesting question. So we're talking about serving the Eibishter b'simcha. So I think most of us have some intuitive sense as to what it means to do a mitzvah b'simcha, to appreciate the godliness in the mitzvah. But how do you do the avodah of iskafia b'simcha? How do you stay away from evil, b'simcha? I want to do something. How am I b'simcha that I'm not doing it? I'm not b'simcha. I won't do it. I get it. It's Kabbalah Soul. I'm not going to do this. I want to, but I'm not going to. Why not? Because God said don't, but I really want to. Right? So how do I do that b'simcha? Not b'simcha. I'm annoyed. I'd love to do that. Okay, but I'm Jewish. I can't. That's the way it goes. There's 8 billion people who can, but I'm not allowed to. Okay. Fine. So he said, wow, amazing. Last night he was in a Farbrengen. The night before he was in a Farbrengen, and the Mashpia Farbrengen. He's 40 years old, this kid. I'm having a conversation with him. It's not like he's a Bacher in Yeshiva. He said that in the Farbrengen, so the Mashpia said something very, very interesting. What's a lav? And this is what the Rebbe is talking about. What's a lav? A negative commandment. But how can you do a negative commandment b'simcha? We have to do it, but how am I b'simcha that I'm not doing what there's part of me that what I'd like to do? So he said such an amazing thing. You're sitting on the Eibishter's lap. You're his only child. He loves you, and this is what the Baal Shem Tov taught us, that the Eibishter loves every single one of us like an only child born to the old age of his parents. And the Eibishter is stroking your cheek, and he points over there. He says, you see that? Don't go there. Stay here with me. Don't go there. That's a love. That's what a negative commandment is. The Eibishter says, don't go there. Stay here with me. If you go there, you're not with me. Don't go there. Stay here with me. Oh, can you do that b'simcha? Yeah. You could do that. You could stay with the Eibishter. It's an amazing idea. Even the love can be done. But again, what's that based on? It's based on what the Rebbe just told us. If I appreciate the beauty of the mitzvah, which is I'm sitting on the Eibishter's lap and he's stroking my cheek, so that I can appreciate the fact that the Aveira is leaving that place. I don't want to leave that place. I don't want to leave that place. Look at where you are. You're sitting on the Eibishter's lap and he's stroking your cheek and telling you how much he loves you. So I'm not going anywhere. Okay. Frierdiker Rebbe can get in your kishka.